Architect and designer Marcel Breuer embraced the innovations of the 20th century and saturated his works with the principles of modernism, bringing to the design world a forward-thinking attitude that would impact the approach and mentality of contemporary designer Johnathan Ive. Breuer was both a student and teacher at the Bauhaus during the early 20th century and imparted his education on the world through his designs. His work exemplifies great modernist design, pairing stripped-back structures with mathematics, achieving elegance through simplification. Breuer aimed for transparency in design, highlighting rather than hiding the materials he worked with, and he promoted affordability, seeking to bring good design to the public. This film will focus on Breuer as a pioneer of modernism, concentrating on his impact in shaping the movement, and will discuss his influence through his design process and beliefs on Johnathan Ive. Marcel Breuer, born in 1902, harboured a talent for art, which earned him a scholarship to a Viennese art school. However, Breuer quit after only a few weeks, dissatisfied with the teaching, and promptly enrolled at the Bauhaus school, drawn in by the promise that he would work with his hands. He admired the school's approach of marrying functional design with the principles of fine art. He quickly adopted this into his design philosophy. Walter Gropius praised his carpentry and promoted him within a year to teacher. This began Breuer's long and momentous career until his retirement in 1976. The Vasily chair, first created in 1925, is the epitome of modernism and the Bauhaus philosophy. Breuer developed the Vasily during his time at the Bauhaus, and it remains one of his most iconic designs to date. Breuer prioritized the modernism motto of function before form. The chair is extremely simple, consisting of only steel tubes and stretchable leather, both becoming popular as innovative materials around this time. He minimized the number of materials necessary to construct the chair to make it sustainable, cost-effective for manufacturers, and above all else, more affordable, satisfying the Bauhaus's underlying goal of generating accessible design. The Vasily is highly reminiscent of contemporary furniture, innovative through its simplification of older intricate styles, reducing familiar shapes down to fundamentals. The new tubular frame can support the weight of a person just as the dense pre-Bauhaus chairs could. Breuer obsessed over small details, utilizing his tutoring in geometry to perfect the angle of the seat for optimized comfort. The success of Marcel Breuer's work popularized the use of steel tubes in furniture and homeware. The modernist ideology that he curated during this time would continue to find presence in his work long after he had concluded his time at the Bauhaus. The modernism influence remained with Breuer long after he had left the Bauhaus, and his later work, the Whitney Museum of American Art, showcases the principles that he continued to employ in his designs. Commissioned in 1963 to design the museum, Breuer took to the project with great enthusiasm and birthed the Whitney Museum, which did not overshadow, but instead supplied the perfect backdrop for the contemporary artworks. Concrete, a material popular at the Bauhaus, was used to great effect, allowing Breuer to easily replicate the ambitious shape he had envisioned. He understood that the building itself was a representation of the art that the city had to offer, and hence it needed to have an identity in the neighborhood of 50-story skyscrapers. The Whitney Museum, lacking the ornate facade of the surrounding houses, draws the eye, transforming the ordinary Upper East Street into a token of the modernist movement. Where the other buildings are unremarkable, falling in rows, the Whitney has a staggered facade. Where the apartments have several windows, the front of the Whitney has one. The Whitney is proudly modernist, and its design sparks the intrigue of visitors, continuing to bring the Bauhaus style to the public almost a century after the school's closure. While Breuer's pieces rejected the styles of the past, his design was reactionary to common affairs. Throughout his prolific career, Breuer experienced both the peaks and troughs of economic security. Furthermore, he witnessed a societal shift in what consumers needed and expected. The Vasily chair culminated from pivotal changes. The burgeoning modernist movement, which was shunning the aesthetically decorative conceptions of previous movements in favor of observing the core problem that design needed to solve, and the upset of a world war that had left countries depleted of the resources which had funded the designs of the previous era. The Vasily was highly indicative of the major change of the early 1900s. It consisted of only 2 inexpensive materials and was suitable for mass production. The unfavourable situation was not a deterrent, but instead fueled Breuer to fulfill the needs of then-destitute Germany. With a Bauhaus-esque focus on effective, affordable products, and his civilization more than ever before in need of this simplified form of design, Breuer conceived an innovative chair, symbolic of its impoverished birthplace. A rise in fascism also restricted the design world. The forced closure of the Bauhaus in 1933 by the Nazi Party saw Breuer flee Germany. He settled in the United States of America in 1937, a thriving country whose design, unlike Europe's, was determined by the consumer's tastes. America was able to emerge from two world wars stronger, and the post-war decades provided the perfect ground for Breuer to hone his craft, no longer limited by a lack of resources or time. Breuer was able to thrive in America, now having the opportunity to explore architecture in ways he could not during the socio-economic drought in Germany. Though stylistically his designs retained the Bauhaus style, he reflected his American contemporaries in mindset. Breuer and a new wave of American designers were forward-thinking in cultivating the adolescent metropolitan area. The Whitney Museum, created between 1963 and 1966, was born out of a time of mass development for New York, and the Whitney was a response to the megastructures exploding from the 60s. Breuer's Whitney is concrete, abstract, and self-contained, a divergence from the colossal skyscrapers birthed from this era. Breuer contributed to the change in philosophy, promoting the merging of art and industry, and his values continued well into his career to exemplify modernism. Although the Whitney Museum was completed in 1966, the Bauhaus style, instilled in Breuer, shone through 30 years after he left the institution. His work was thoroughly modernist, and remained so because of his futurist attitude and, above all else, his desire for an efficient world. Now, almost a century later, the Bauhaus principles of Breuer's work live on, saturated in the work of one of the world's most prolific designers, Johnathan Ive. Ive worked for Apple for 27 years, and his work has not just brought incomparable profit to the company, but has revolutionized the way people live today through the introduction of their smartphones in 2007. The iMac was the first Apple product accredited to Ive and embodies many principles that were also prominent in Breuer's work 50 years ago. Steve Jobs' vision guided Ive to make the iMac really simple. While simplicity is not a goal, Bauhaus alumni aim to only include elements that were imperative to the function of their works. As much as the recognizable style of the products has come to define Apple now, the iMac was created by designers that thought of function first before form. Jobs believed that industrial design and engineering should be part of the same process, which directly mirrors one of the most basic Bauhaus principles. There is no essential difference between the artist and the artisan. Ive also valued transparency in his designs. In 1998, the iMac debuted with a transparent shell, allowing consumers to see inside their computer. As Ive continued to generate further iterations of the iMac, he followed the function over form rule, eliminating all unnecessary components. The original iMacs had no floppy disk drive, an ambitious move at the time, and the latest iMac is only 5mm thick. Finally, Ive's main goal was to create products that, as the Bauhaus did, resisted the past. This mentality created the slick, colourful iMacs, a rejection of competitors' boring industrial styles. Even in the creation of the now top-selling iPhones, Ive was forward-thinking, designing larger touchscreen phones when small flip phones were favoured, a risk that paid off, resulting in the company's current $1 trillion net worth, the profitable return of designs infused with modernist principles. Marcel Breuer has played a significant role in the popularization of the modernist movement and Bauhaus principles, and he has influenced countless designers with his strong, society-conscious design ideology, long after his passing. Johnathan Ive's designs today infuse the principles made prevalent by Breuer, and Ive can attribute the unfathomable success of the products he has created for Apple to Bauhaus principles. Breuer and Ive's repeated success in design has proven that the Bauhaus philosophy culminates in strong design, and provides an answer to why these 20th century teachings will likely continue to influence designers for years to come.